The battle for Mosul has seen further fierce fighting as coalition forces push closer to ISIL's last remaining stronghold in Iraq. Kurdish Peshmerga forces launched a huge assault northeast of the city on Sunday, saying they'd captured the town of Bashika. Around 50 villages have now been liberated from ISIL control since Monday's offensive began, Iraq's army says. The coalition claims to have advanced to within 5 kilometers of Mosul at the closest point, but ISIL responded with several counterattacks, notably in Rutbah and Kirkuk, in an apparent attempt aimed at diverting government forces away from Mosul. The mayor of Rutbah, a town in western Anbar province, described the assault by so-called Islamic State fighters as fierce and called on Baghdad to save the situation.
The ceasefire in the Syrian city of Aleppo, which has been in effect since early this morning, has been extended for an extra 24 hours. Meanwhile, there are some reports of forces preventing civilians from leaving the eastern part of the city. The humanitarian corridors opened up by the Syrian army with Russian support are coming under frequent shelling and sniper fire. Civilians who had hoped for a chance to leave to safety are now having to flee in panic.
أنا أمي هي جوا ومقطوعة، أخوي بده يشيلها وما في مين يساعده يشيلها. إنه عم بقول لي إنه طلع إنه بركي إنه في حدا يساعدني بشيلها، ما عبر الشو، بقول له قدم جوا هذا الإرهاب، يعني الإرهاب إنه عم بقولوا لهم إنه هذا قدمه، طيب هلا أمي أنا مريضة شلون بده يقدم؟ لك بتمنى بس انه تطلع، زعلانه عليها الجو، قتلهم الجو كافر يا خي، ما في الذليه لا.
The Russian Defense Ministry has accused the U.S.-led coalition of war crimes in Iraq. The Defense Ministry says the deadly airstrikes like the one near Kirkuk on Friday have become a routine. It adds that such attacks claim civilian lives and they bear the hallmarks of war crimes. On Friday, an airstrike by the U.S.-led coalition hit a mourning ceremony near a shrine in the town of Dakuk, killing 15 women and injuring 50 others. U.S.-led warplanes have also carried out similar attacks in Syria. In the worst such incident back in September, they targeted Syria's eastern Deir ez-Zor province killing over 80 Syrian soldiers and injuring at least 120 others.
UN Human Rights Council has opened a probe into alleged war crimes committed during the battle for Aleppo. An inquiry is set to identify and bring to justice those who are responsible for these alleged abuses. The resolution was brought forward by Britain and the Western allies, which say Russia and Syrian airstrikes have caused most of the civilian casualties. However, the chairman of the International Commission of Inquiry on Syria blamed both sides for failing to protect innocent civilians.
ISIS may be losing ground on the battlefield, but by attacking Kirkuk, it's shown it can still carry out deadly terror attacks.
We were with this local SWAT team as they fought a gun battle with ISIS. The surprise attack started with multiple suicide bombings before the extremists holed up inside buildings, including this house under construction.
We know there are between 6 to 8 ISIS elements over there inside that building.
6 to 8 inside that building over there?
Yeah.
On the streets below, the bodies of dead ISIS extremists. Security forces said there were 50 behind the assault.
Elsewhere, Saudi warplanes pound more areas across Yemen as a 3-day UN-backed ceasefire ends. Saudi jets bombed numerous locations in Sana'a, Hodeidah, Taiz, and Hajj provinces. The 3-day ceasefire ended late Saturday, with both sides accusing the other party of violating the truce repeatedly. The United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, Ismail ul-Sheikh Ahmed, has called for the renewal of the ceasefire for another 72 hours. The truce was aimed at providing an opportunity to deliver humanitarian help to civilians. The Saudi aggression has left over 10,100 Yemenis, mostly civilians, dead. Millions of people have also been displaced and need immediate food and medicine.
Top story this morning, investigators are trying to determine who was responsible for a string of sophisticated cyber attacks that caused major outages for some of the largest websites in the U.S.
The rolling attacks began Friday. The sites are up and running again. The disruptions happened in the wake of recent breaches that targeted organizations and election agencies. Marley Hall is here with more. Marley, good morning.
Good morning. Overnight, a foreign group called New World Hackers claimed responsibility for the cyber attack. But the American web company at the core of the attack hasn't been able to confirm that. Meanwhile, cyber experts warn hacks like this are becoming the new normal.
The first wave began early Friday, taking down websites including Twitter, Netflix, Amazon, and Spotify, among others. Around noon, a second one hit, which also apparently affected the FBI. The cyber attacks continued throughout the day.
At this point, I don't have any information to share about who may be responsible for that malicious activity.
It just looked like a heavy fog had just moved in, and then all at once you started smelling, and I was like, I asked my sister, I said, are you cleaning with bleach or something? And then it was like a burning smell. It was very strong.
And of course,
we're facing some of the worst droughts in my 50-some odd years here.
Parched fields, dried up rivers and creeks. It's become a serious situation in Haralson County, Georgia, with weeks of hot temperatures and no measurable rain.
Hey, but one way to put it, it's bad. We're in bad shape.
The county, with a population close to 30,000, is located in the northwest part of the state and is now in exceptional drought.
Our main water source is the Tallapoosa River. So when it dries, you're handicapped. So that's very critical.
The Tallapoosa River supplies 80% of the county's water. It now runs feet, not inches, below normal levels. The Haralson County Fire Department removed beaver dams and hundreds of debris piles from the river to help the flow and increase water levels at the intake valves.
The area I'm walking on is normally covered in water. Right now we're walking on gravel. All the wood you see exposed out here normally is underwater.
French police officers stage a protest rally in Paris for a 6th day in a row to demand better protection for field officers and harsher punishments for criminals.
We just need to apply the law. It's necessary that the thugs are punished and the fear has to change its side. Today it's the police who are in fear. It's not only the citizens. Police also. We have become targets, but we're not cannon fodder, and we have the means to restore order. We just need to want to.
Hundreds of officers participated in the demonstration carrying signs that read, "Police are angry." They called for reinforcements and slammed lack of government spending to deal with lawlessness. The officers said they are fed up with their situation, warning the government against ignoring their demands. The protests are triggered by a spate of attacks on the police during street demonstrations and patrols in crime-stricken suburbs. The attacks began in June when an officer and his wife were stabbed to death outside their home near Paris.
Now, Niger has become a hub for the illegal trade in migrants and refugees. Smugglers transport tens of thousands of people across the Sahara Desert every year. The refugees come from countries across West Africa and gather in the city of Agadez. From there, they're smuggled into Libya. Their hope is to reach the coast where they can catch a boat to Europe. However, for many, the journey ends in disappointment. Nicole Johnston has this exclusive report.
Behind the mud brick walls of Agadez, there's another world of smugglers and migrants, and they're scared. Police are cracking down on this trade in human misery. Its currency is Africa's poorest. They're in the middle of a dangerous journey to Europe. Most won't make it. Some have already failed, returning from the desert defeated.
More than 170 inmates have escaped a jail in Haiti following a mass breakout. One guard was killed in the incident, which took place around 45 kilometers north of the capital, Port-au-Prince. A prisoner also died after falling from a wall. He apparently hit his head during the panicked escape. Thousands of anti-government protesters have taken to the streets of Venezuela's capital, Caracas, following last week's move by election officials to block a recall referendum. The rally closed one lane of a major highway. In what organisers hope will be the first of many rallies, the protest was led by women dressed in white and included Lilian Tintori, the wife of jailed opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez. She said, "No one is going to stop us. We're going to rescue democracy," writes the Venezuelan family, "our values." We're sending a message to the international democratic community. In Venezuela, there is a dictatorship declared cruel without limits and unleashed. And that is why we women are sending a message to various players, in the first place to the National Assembly, to go on the offensive.
More than 800 of the estimated 3,300 migrants rescued by the Italian Coast Guard on Friday are brought to safety. They were picked up off one large boat, 3 smaller ones and 20 rubber vessels. And these are the lucky ones. The bodies of 7 dead migrants were also recovered.
Now, the United Nations says there's been a 10% spike in opium cultivation in Afghanistan this year. It's released a new report which says 93% of the increase is happening in the southern and western parts of the country. A total of 355 hectares of poppy eradication was carried out this year, and the UN said that's a steep 91% decline in eradication from 2015. International donors have spent billions of dollars on counter-narcotics efforts over the past decades, but those efforts have shown little results.